is a spiritual deity. Freedom and liberty and justice shall fight for you. When you fight for freedom with all your soul, take it from me. This is Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB, the voice of the nation, the voice of the rising sun.
Corporation of Biafra, BCB, bringing you news, cultural and educational programs. This is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra. Announcement from the leadership of Biafra government in exile. This is BCB.
Us today on Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra this Sunday. I welcome you and I thank you for tuning in. I want to speak to you today, Biafrans all over the world, on the restoration of the state of Biafra, a case for clear and forthright leadership. The challenges indigenous peoples face today all over the world is immense. It has been often noted that the core concerns of indigenous nationalities, both at international and national levels, should be recognized in a clear, forthright, and honest manner. This is therefore a universal relevance to recognize those values which are particularly dear to the indigenous peoples, such as the freedom of association, freedom from discrimination, the right to live in freedom, peace and security, good governance, cultural diversity, and the right to self-determination. The dangers we face today are great, and if not addressed, it will have grave consequences for some indigenous populations, especially the indigenous peoples of Biafra. And we can see the threats as they face us today. Threats of extermination, of another genocide, of economic stagnation, servitude, slavery, and total annihilation. This is very true. The dangers indigenous peoples of Biafra face today in Nigeria as a result of the activities of terrorists from northern Nigeria, Boko Haram, Fulani headsmen, bandits, deeply corrupt government. The United Nations, in its Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, affirmed that indigenous peoples are equal to all other peoples, while recognizing the right of all peoples to be different, to consider themselves different, and to be respected as such. The Charter of the United Nations states that indigenous peoples have the right to self-determination, and by virtue of that right, they freely determine their status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Indeed, President Muhammadu Buhari, in his address to the United Nations Security Council in 2015, rightly called for the self-determination of Palestinian and Western Saharan peoples to be implemented as adjudged by the UN as qualifying for self-determination. Just like indigenous peoples in Asia, in South America, in Europe, and also in the United Kingdom, and many other places, indigenous peoples of Biafra, the indigenous peoples of Yoruba land, and many other indigenous nationalities in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria are actively seeking ways to exercise their right to self-determination, to freedom, to peaceful existence, security, good and honest governance. After so many years of being denied these rights, they too qualify to be treated fairly and be given the chance to actualize their dream to be free. There is therefore an urgent need to establish a clear roadmap for indigenous communities to achieve self-determination in order to protect them from dangers posed by terrorists and jihadists, from corrupt governments, effects of climate change, and other natural disasters. Biafra Government in Exile, BGIE, has developed this roadmap and stand prepared in an honest, prudent, peaceful, diplomatic and democratic process to work towards a swift restoration of Biafra and self-determination for the indigenous peoples of Biafra. We are aware of the Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations, which enshrines clear systems through which self-determination can be achieved in order to minimize unwarranted invasions and to encourage peaceful separation of unions that have proved unworkable and counterproductive for many years. Indeed, diasporas have immense role to play in both drafting the principles and designing appropriate measures through which this can be accomplished. In the light of present threats of insecurity in our homeland, every Biafran in diaspora must now identify with the work of Biafra Government in Exile and contribute to the self-determination program so that we can exit peacefully from Nigeria. The indigenous people of Biafra, under the leadership and direction of Biafra Government in Exile, are ready to work with the United Nations and other international bodies and other nation states to achieve a peaceful exit from Nigeria, which will in turn create the environment for eradicating extreme poverty, reducing income poverty, hunger, disease, lack of adequate shelter, and exclusion, while promoting gender equality, health, education, security, and environmental sustainability. So we want to see this roadmap embraced by all our people, clearly defined and funded, with the cooperation of international bodies and partners, working closely together with the Biafra Government in Exile. This would be incredibly helpful and most importantly would help avert series of conflicts we have witnessed and continue to see in parts of Africa and the Middle East, which is now beginning to show in southern Nigeria, in the Middle Belt region, in Yorubaland, and even in Igboland. And I sincerely hope that the roadmap that we present, the plan that we pursue, through which we can achieve self-determination, will ensure that the search for an independent state of Biafra does not turn into yet another costly conflict story. For a little bit of background, a little bit of history, which is important because we need to understand where we are coming from and then to articulate how we want to get to our destination, where we want to go. Biafra had existed for over 500 years before Nigeria was created in 1914. The British has had diplomatic dealings with Biafra before amalgamation. So we know that there was a nation even before the war, even before the declaration by Ojukwu. There was a nation called Biafra. A certain John Beecroft was the British consul of the Bight of Biafra from 30 June 1849 to 10th of June 1854. So there was a Biafran nation which had consular engagements with other nations. The Republic of Biafra, which was declared by General Ojukwu in 1967, was not a new country. That declaration was an attempt to restore the ancient Biafra nation that existed before Nigeria was created. This is because of the necessities of the time, in order to protect the lives of Biafrans who were being slaughtered in large numbers in northern Nigeria. The Igbo people practiced democracy and freedom of expression long before the British arrived. One of the things that made strong impression to the first European visitors to Igbo land was the extent to which democracy was truly practiced. Henry Johnson, an early Christian missionary to an Igbo town, Asaba to be precise, said this, and I quote, "I felt I was in a free land among a free people." The amalgamation of North and South was a monumental error, which should never have happened and have proved to be a very costly mistake to the indigenous peoples of Biafra. The governments of Nigeria have failed and still failing in its responsibility to protect the lives of indigenous peoples of Biafra. In fact, current events and activities of terrorists and jihadists and Fulani headsmen are there for everyone to see. Our land and forests have been surrounded. They are kidnapping men, women, even our revered bishops, priests, reverend fathers are kidnapped. Some are even murdered. Large ransoms collected before some of them are released. This is a travesty. It is an abomination and cannot be allowed to continue. Chinua Achebe, in his book, There Was a Country, said this about the killing of Biafrans in 1967. "I watched horrified as the northern officers carried out a revenge coup in which they killed Igbo officers and men in large numbers. If it had ended there, the matter might have been seen as a very tragic interlude in nation building, a horrendous tit for tat. But the northerners turned on Igbo civilians living in the north and unleashed waves of brutal massacres. People that observed these events, somebody like Colin Legum of the British Observer newspaper, was the first to describe them as a pogrom. Over 30,000 civilian men, women, and children of Biafra descent were slaughtered. A Sierra Leonean living in northern Nigeria at the time wrote home in horror and said this: "The killing of the Igbo has become a state industry in Nigeria." End of quote. Coexisting in a nation with such desperate people, religious and cultural background like the Hausa Fulani Muslims is no longer an option for Biafrans. Recently, we have seen churches bombed, schools, parks, markets, and public football viewing places attacked by terrorists and Fulani headsmen and bandits now, who make good their promise to drench the land with the blood of Igbos and Christians. In the Civil War alone, over 3.5 million Biafrans were killed, over 1 million children from starvation. Some aid agencies like the Red Cross, the World Council of Churches, the Canadian Council of Churches, Caritas, and many others came in and helped. But the rest of the world turned its back on Biafra as genocide was committed against her. Today, together, we can turn things around. We can work together, everyone in diaspora and in the homeland, and in conjunction with a renewed determination by the Biafra government in exile, in collaboration with United Nations and other agencies and freedom-loving people. We can banish the evils of the past. We can confront and defeat the monster of today by showing true and honest commitment in our leadership, in our plan, in our programs. Knowing that the light we kindle today will shine in the darkness, and the darkness will never withstand it. Biafra government in exile is ready to partner with the United Nations, with other free nations and other agencies to save our people from the chains of discrimination, from poverty, from corruption, from insecurity, genocide, and from jihad. We are prepared and have been preparing to bring transparent and focused leadership to the struggle and to the restoration program. We trust in a sound, honest, and transparent foundation as the basis for management of our resources and management and delivery of the projects within the restoration program. Only in an independent state of Biafra will we be able to realize our dreams and our hopes are renewed, lives protected, the dignity of women restored, and smiles returned to the lips of all our children. Now is the time. Join the government, identify with the government. The government is ready now. We are ready. We are disciplined, we are peaceful, tolerant, creative, and we are prepared to work hard. We're prepared to be fair and fearless in dealing with the core issues, knowing that this is not only an emerging problem, but a full-blown one that requires clear direction and bold economic, social, and political commitment. Thank you. Continue to listen to us as we bring you more programs every Sunday. God bless you, and God bless the nation of Biafra.
Fellow Biafrans, this is Rosama, and this is BCB. On July 2nd, 2022, the Biafra Government in Exile, BGIE, held a conversation forum with representatives of various pro-Biafra groups. The goal was to share what BGIE has been doing for Biafrans at home and in the diaspora, mostly behind the scenes. Also, to present ideas from leading pro-Biafra activists and intellectuals about the struggle, to explain why we must continue and why we have been struggling, to address questions about the strategies for achieving Biafra restoration, and to talk about our collective responsibility towards Biafra restoration and the possibilities of collaboration. I leave you this piece, an excerpt from the conversation. Take a listen. Thank you.
Have four of our people speak to us. And why today's conference is very critical is because there are questions we have been hearing, questions have been thrown to the different government in exile all this while, all these years, about what is the strategy, what is the plan, how do we, in practical terms, what do we have on ground, what are we doing in practical terms, outside all our years of talking and holding discussions. So today we have chosen to go out of our normal style to tell our people the strategy, the plan. Of course, that it's not everything that our people say. It's not everything that is for the public is meant for the general. So we are going to hold this conversation on what we are doing, where you can play a role, what you can do together with all of us to get our freedom. That's the crux of this meeting today. But before we get into that, where the leader of this team will explain in detail what our strategies are and how far we have gone. We are going to also have other talks on the urgency of now, on the diplomatic issues, that we must tackle, and what BGIE, Biafran Government in Exile, is and represents, and what they have done over the years, quietly, more or less under the table, apart from those who know. We are going to reveal all those here today, and that's why this particular conversation is very critical, and it's for you to take it home to your various groups, to your various organizations, to your various contacts, to tell them, yes, there is a plan. Yes, there is an ongoing, detailed, day-to-day activity geared towards getting us what we want. And the good thing also is that we are doing this not in isolation, but with so many people and so many groups who believe in what we believe in. So without wasting much of our time, we're going to go straight to the first speaker to open the dialogue. And what will appeal for all of us to do is that we know you have questions. Please note your questions. At the end of the entire, speeches, we will now take all our questions because we want you to hear us. It is important that you hear us, and then we take all the questions the same time when the last speaker has spoken. So I'm going to go ahead to call our dear elder, leader, Professor Emeritus, Professor Lekwachi. When you have the caliber of people like this, and when people ask who are the intellectuals in this struggle, it marvels me, makes me laugh. When we have people like this, who are the people, the harbingers, the people that started this entire restoration of lost sovereignty. Yeah, that Emmanuel Lekwachi will call on you to speak to your brethren there, sir.
This takes me unawares completely. I'm just going to make two or three. The very existence of the people in these areas. If you come to the eastern region, you have the Efiki, Dibio, Igbo, Ijo, Okoni. You move on to the west. I'm not going to be able to name all of them, but primarily Yoruba, Igbira, and then you move up into the middle belt. And you find all the ethnic groups there, Idoma, Tiv, and the rest of them. Everybody within these areas, your life as an individual, the life of your family, the life of your community is in danger. You are in very serious danger of being colonized by the Hausa Fulani oligarchs. It is no longer a theoretical issue. It is no longer supposition. It is now practical. The physical danger of your land being taken over by House of Fulani oligarchs and you being driven off your land. We started talking about this over 20 years ago. People didn't pay attention. Those who listened to the former voice of Biafra International will remember that for 8 years, this radio was broadcasting every Saturday, warning our people about this coming danger. Now, it used to be that they would attack you in the far north, in Sokoto, in Kano, in Medugri. Actually, it's down to just and such areas. And then it came down to further in Middle Belt. Today, it is our reality that our mothers, our fathers, our brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters, in our own communities in Eastern region, and sometimes cannot go to the farm because they are afraid that they will be kidnapped. And it's not an empty fear, it is real. They will be kidnapped, the women among them will be raped and taken prisoner as sex slaves. This is worrying before that. That is that this area that I mentioned is actually the Christian area of Nigeria, primarily. And there has been a scheme to completely overrun the place and forcibly make everybody become a Muslim. It used to sound like, an unreal possibility. Today, bishops in their own villages in Eastern region and Western region and Midwest region are kidnapped. Bishops. I'm not talking about mayor priests. I'm talking about bishops. They are kidnapped, taken hostage, and asked to produce $100 million, $50 million, as the case may be. And of course, they tax their poor congregation, they produce the money, and they give that money to Fulani mercenaries who will take the money and go buy more arms. There was a time we were saying this, that this is going to happen. I know that I wrote one of the papers which was broadcast, where I was warning the bishops, are you waiting until the Diocese of Owerri becomes the Emirate of Owerri? The Diocese of Onitsha becomes the Emirate of Onitsha. Is that what you are waiting for? That was more than 10 years ago. I wrote that paper. That is what is happening today. So you find that we are really facing an existential threat like we have never seen before. The third arm of this tripod is that they have our own brothers and sisters as the people who will help them in achieving these objectives. And they have put those brothers and sisters in positions of authority and responsibility, where they control them and make them do exactly what they want. Because the two elements that hold feudalism, which is the governing philosophy in the north, in the far north, the two elements that hold it together, One is corruption. Once you are corrupted, you are gone. You have lost your soul. You can no longer stand up to feudalists. The second weapon that feudalism uses to perpetuate itself is militarism. And we are beginning to see that. So they corrupt you, and they buy your soul, and you are done. And the next thing is they use force, the element of coercion. If you look at the Nigerian situation now, the federal government of Nigeria enjoys total control over the instruments of coercion. It is really very difficult now to separate that instrument from the instrument that is being used by Fulani mercenaries. It is beginning to become difficult to differentiate between the mercenaries and the official government weapons or mercenary or machinery of coercion. It is beginning to become very difficult to differentiate between them. This is not going to end. It's not going to stop. It is going to continue until we are totally overrun. What is my solution? We have to separate ourselves from the far north. These three groups I mentioned, or these three geographical areas, Eastern region, doesn't matter what you call yourself, Igbo, Efik, Ijo, Ibibio, whatever you call yourself. Whatever happens to the Igbo will happen to the Ijo, to the Efik, to the Ibibio. So anybody who, oh, we are Efik, nothing is going to happen, you are stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. The destiny of all the people in the Eastern region is in one basket. The destiny of all the people in the Western region, whether they are Yoruba or Igbira or whatever, is in the same basket. The destiny of the people in the Middle Belt, whatever the ethnic nationality they claim, is in the same basket. There is no escaping it. And until the three groups come together and decide that they want to separate from the country called Nigeria, they are in danger of being completely overrun and destroyed. And this is the reality that we are facing today. So anybody who is talking about any other thing, good for you, but this is my analysis of the situation. I am yet to be proved wrong. We have been working on this for over 20 years, and progressively, everything we have predicted would happen has happened almost exactly as we predicted. There was a time we would tell which city will be attacked by the Fulani mercenaries. There was a time we were able to do that. We tell you the city and the time. And within that time period, that city would be attacked. So we haven't been very far off the mark. It is up to us now to decide what we want to do. Do our people want to fold our arms and pray and have vigils and do all of that stuff and sing, have beautiful music? Is that what we want to do? Or do we want to fight back? That's the challenge we have. Thank you.
This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
This is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, bringing you the news summaries for the week. In the news this week, from Niger News Online, Kuje prison attack, Nigerians caused it, not Buhari, PDP new media head. From The Punch, we don't believe in Nigerian election, says IPOB. And finally, from the Sun News Online, the Toxic Water Resources Bill. Stay tuned for the details coming shortly. Kuje prison attack, Nigerians caused it, not Buhari. The head of new media to the People's Democratic Party, Anthony Ehilebo, has blamed Nigerians for the terrorist attack on Kuje prison. Speaking on the recent invasion of the facilities by terrorists, where over 879 prisoners were freed, including top Boko Haram detainees, Ehilebo, in a chat with Legit.ng, said Nigerians are to blame for Buhari and his government's alleged incompetence. He exclaimed that despite the power of the people have, they have chosen not to change things for the good. Ehilebo insisted that the country is now in a state where Nigerians have to be told the truth, adding that it is time to put an end to the blame game. He said, "I blame Nigerians. This time around, I blame them because if you have a defective staff, I mean your staff that keeps failing you and you are not doing anything about it, your life will be in danger. If you fail to sack the staff, then face the consequences of living with that staff. I think we have gotten to the point where we must tell Nigerians the truth to their face. Most times we play the blame game by just blaming Buhari, but that will amount to nothing. Nigerians have to act. Nigerians need to face the National Assembly to impeach the president. If the most hardened criminal in Nigeria should be set free in such a manner, then something is absolutely wrong if Nigerians continue to keep quiet." Speaking further on the release of Boko Haram members from the prison, the PDP chieftain blamed the Nigerian government for keeping them there in the first place. He said, "There is no place you can tell me that high-profile terrorists like Kabiru Sokoto and a host of others have escaped from prison, and then the president still has his job. We are not serious." And then the Minister of Defense goes ahead to say, "We will see what we can do." And the president is still posturing, not knowing that terror has been unleashed in his own enclaves. He cannot marvel over the Kuje attack because the same terrorists have attacked his own convoy. We still have to go back to who has the power to resolve this issue. Where does the real power to resolve this issue lie? It lies in the hands of the people. Someone is a threat or playing with your life, and you cannot, in the first instance, sack that person and you think that this is normal. We don't believe in Nigerian election, says IPOB. And this is our second news item from punchng.com. The indigenous people of Biafra has said that the agitations for the Republic of Biafra cannot be compromised by Nigerian politics, responding to an Islamic cleric, Sheikh Ahmed Gumi, alleging that IPOB agitations has slowed down in the southeast since Peter Obi picked the presidential ticket for Labour Party. The secessionist group, in a statement on Wednesday through its media and publicity secretary, Imam Powerful, says Gumi's comments show the level of cluelessness and uninformed he is about the IPOB movement and its activities. He insisted that the Biafra agitation is still intact and nothing will change the group's resolve towards the fight to achieve Biafra freedom through peaceful, non-violent, globally accepted practices. The statement read in part, IPOB does not engage with any shambolic selection process they call Nigerian election, and we are not interested in their fraudulent ways of selecting the president of Nigeria because we do not believe in Nigeria anymore. We have said it before, now that IPOB does not know Peter Obi, and Peter Obi does not know IPOB. If Peter Obi knows IPOB, its aims and objective, he wouldn't have come out in the first place to contest, to waste his wealth and vast knowledge, talent, and wisdom endowed with experience which God Almighty gave and blessed Biafrans with in the Zoological Republic. Therefore, For Peter Obi to have come out to contest for Nigeria president is an indication that he is not on the same page with IPOB, and people should not equate him with IPOB agenda. They can say any other thing about him, not Biafra agitation. We can never slow down agitation until Biafra comes. Any Biafran who comes out and joins the election process under Nigeria has publicly proven that he or she is not in the same ideology as IPOB, end quote. Our final news summary for the day comes from the Sun News Online, and it's about the Toxic Water Resources Bill. The reintroduction of the controversial Water Resources Bill in the House of Representatives, despite being rejected by many Nigerians, is an indication that those behind it have a set agenda. The bill, which was thrown out by the National Assembly, was on June 30th, 2022, brought back by the Chairman of the House of Committee on Water Resources, Sada Soli. The bill seeks to bring all water resources as well as riverbanks under the control of the federal government through the agencies to be created by the bill. The bill was also introduced in the 7th and 8th National Assemblies and was rejected due to oppositions by Nigerians. When the bill resurfaced earlier in the 9th Assembly, it faced serious oppositions and was subsequently withdrawn following stringent protests from many lawmakers, the Nigeria Governor Forum, NGF, and other Nigerians. In renewed bid to reintroduce the bill, the Speaker of the House, Femi Gbajabiamila, had assured Nigerians that the obnoxious issues in the old bills had been reviewed. Some of the sections in the bills that are contentious include Section 13, which states that in implementing the principles under subsection 2 of the section, the institutions established under this Act shall promote integrated water resources management and the coordinated management of the land and water resources, surface waters and groundwater resources, river basins and adjacent marine and coastal environment, and upstream and downstream interests. The most contentious aspect of the water bill in section 2.1, which states all surface water and groundwater wherever it occurs is a resource common to all people. With the reintroduction of the bill in the House of Representatives, there are fears that the federal government wants to, through the bill, annex the land in littoral states for the benefits of certain ethnic group. The desperation to pass the water bill cannot be rationalized. Since the water bill had earlier been rejected by Nigerians, we enjoin members of the lower house to throw it away without any further delay. Apart from not serving any useful purpose, the water bill further gives more powers to the central governments at a time there is a stringent clamor for the devolution of power from the center to the federating units. Already, there are 68 items on the exclusive legislative list. We believe that adding the water bill to the list will be unnecessary. Instead of bringing back the obnoxious water bill, the lawmakers should think of making laws that will enhance the peace and unity of the country, as well as laws that will ensure good governance, prosperity, and economic growth. It is worth reminding the lawmakers that the peace and the unity of the country should not be compromised. The energy expended in reintroducing the water bill ought to be used in addressing the numerous challenges facing the country, such as insecurity, bad economy, and corruption. And that brings an end to the news summaries for the week. This is BCB once again, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, thanking all of you for listening and saying goodbye, friends.
Welcome to Security Solutions from BCB, Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra. Today we shall be looking at a very crucial discussion which will help our people in the face of the atrocities going on in our land. Today we shall be discussing on solutions for preventive measures. I will start by telling our people Ndibo, vis-a-vis Biafrans all over the world, that the times we are in calls for very strict and conscious understanding of the events, happenings, and activities in our immediate domains and environments. As we all can attest to, recent happenings in Alibo vis-a-vis Biafra land has left no doubt in the sights and minds of well-abreasted intelligent individuals amongst Ndibo and all Biafrans in the general that Agwo non-Africa, literally meaning things has really fallen apart and the center can no longer hold. A situation where we keep hearing so many things and also situations of one Nigeria, yet Ndibo Biafrans are being victimized, killed, harassed, and intimidated does not equate that oneness agreeedom. And such unwarranted craziness and devilish orgy cannot and will not be allowed to continue. Therefore, in the interest of probity and fairness to human life and existence, and also in pursuance of the creed and international code of guiding human lives and existence, our people are authoritatively advised to find a way to defend, protect, and preserve their lives and properties from attacks by their enemies and terrorists. In the face of all relevant laws protecting and guiding human rights and properties, both locally and internationally, no sensible individual or individuals or rights organizations will speak otherwise concerning a brutally oppressed and dehumanized indigenous people who have for so many years endured such barbaric wickedness, such as brutal rape, kidnap, slaughtering, and organ harvesting if ransoms are not met. Therefore, it is very pertinent that Ndibo, vis-a-vis all Biafrans, both in Alibo and all over the world, should wisely and timely rise up to the unwarranted wickedness in our very presence. Terrorists provokingly has declared our natural ancient home land to be their own God-given estate of their forefathers, who were never part of our forefathers, either in culture or traditions. So how can any sensible human being continue to assuage or believe that we as Ndibo are or will eventually remain in the same page with such wicked culture of reasoning. This can never happen. As we speak, the maximum prison known as Kuje, which is in the heart of the Nigerian capital, Abuja, has openly been bombed few days ago by terrorist criminals and disgraced criminal entities such as former police criminal hypocritic terrorist tough guy Abba Kairi, who has been facing cocaine trafficking charges and all manner of vices where they made their money. These people came and took them away. They have all escaped. Alongside over 600 inmates, including terrorist Boko Haram commanders, who the same government of the day will use to fight us and make sure they hold strongly onto power and onto the wealth and God-given resources of Ndibo. Yet, we Biafran Igbos are busy running around aimlessly, fighting ourselves. One pertinent question we must ask ourselves as Ndibo in all is this: in all the evil atrocities being committed by the Fulanese Hausa terrorist groups, has any notable northern leader or governor or any of their people come up openly to discredit evils being perpetuated by their sons and daughters in the conquest war against us? The answer is no. We as Umuigbo must wake up and fight to defend ourselves. It's our fundamental human right, by all means. One thing to note in that Kuje prison break is that from all indications, the government of the day was in the know of these oppressions and attack. If not, why would the soldiers guarding the prison facility be deactivated and redeployed back to the barracks only to be brought back a day after the attacks? On this instance, one might rightly ask, who is fooling who? Ndibo, Morono, Anya. I want to conclude by telling us that if we do not rise up, you don't have to wait for anybody to tell you to protect yourself. Find yourself in groups by the village vigilantes. In any way, it is your authority. You have that human right. It is your human right to apply for arms for protection. You will go and apply for it if you need the license through the authorities. I am General Joske Miracle Egwotu, your security consultant. And I say, remain tight until we meet again on this very platform. God bless you.
This is Rosama, and this is BCB. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples was adopted by the General Assembly on Thursday, 13th September 2007, by a majority of 144 states in favor. 4 against. These were Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United States, and 11 abstentions. And these include Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Burundi, Colombia, Georgia, Kenya, Nigeria, Russian Federation, Samoa, and Ukraine. As you may have noticed, 3 African nations abstained. One of the abstaining nations was Nigeria. We are talking about Nigeria today. Nigeria's abstention does not surprise us given its treatment of its indigenous peoples. To date, Nigeria has refused to recognize the rights of the various indigenous groups within its boundaries. In fact, history shows that the federal government of Nigeria has systematically worked to dominate these indigenous groups or to exterminate them using various strategies, including deploying or supporting agents of destruction and terrorism, such as Boko Haram, the murderous Fulani herdsmen, the Islamic State West Africa, and a wide range of security murders and kidnappings. In addition, the federal government of Nigeria has created policies aimed at alienating indigenous peoples from their lands and resources. A case in point is the control of all oil resources and attendant revenues from the Niger Delta and Southeast by predominantly Hausa Fulani oligarchs and their business cronies. The Buhari government's Ruga Ruga scheme or open grazing policy has created extensive crisis conditions and skirmishes over land rights between indigenous communities, mostly agrarian, and armed Fulani herdsmen, whose goal is to force communities off their ancestral lands and transform those lands to cattle grazing fields. From the Middle Belt to the Southeast and West, indigenous peoples have either been massacred and or displaced by cattle herders, or their villages burnt down. The federal government has done absolutely nothing to address these wrongs. Rather, the government seems to grant more rights to cattle herders and their cattle than to humans. These acts violate the central tenets of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, adopted in 2007, places, quote, the right to self-determination and rights to lands, territories, and resources at its core, unquote. It should be noted that the right to self-determination and natural resources on indigenous peoples' lands and territories were, of course, two of the most politically contentious issues debated during the negotiations of the declaration. Although 144 nations signed on and the 4 protesting nations would later reverse their positions, 15 years later, Nigeria's position of abstention has not changed. Again, why are we not surprised? But in his address to the United Nations General Assembly on September 19th, 2020, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari focused on the genocidal violence against Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. Quote, the international community cannot remain silent and not condemn the horrendous suffering, unquote, of Rohingya Muslims, Buhari said, describing it as a, quote, desperate human rights, unquote, situation. We find it ironic, of course, that Buhari was appealing for the security and human rights of the Rohingyas, while many Biafrans and other indigenous peoples in Nigeria are being exterminated by groups he supports. Although we vehemently condemn the genocide against the Rohingyas and any acts of violence or genocide perpetrated against any group, we must ask why Buhari does not believe that the Biafrans and other indigenous groups in Nigeria who are being slaughtered by Muslim Hausa Fulani herdsmen, Boko Haram, and Islamic State deserve the same human rights he has accorded the Rohingyas. Does the Biafran genocide not deserve attention? In February-March 2021, the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues released a summary report titled State of the World's Indigenous Peoples, Volume 4, Rights to Lands, Territories, and Resources. That report noted that, quote, more than 10 years after the declaration, The same issues, that is, the right to lands, territories, and resources, remain politicized. Articles 25 through 32 of the Declaration specifically address lands, territories, and resources, including indigenous people's spiritual and cultural relationship with their lands, redress and compensation, free, prior, and informed consent, protection of the environment, and indigenous people's traditional knowledge, unquote. These are the issues at the core of the struggles by the indigenous peoples of Biafra and other indigenous groups in Nigeria. The desire for self-realization is real. It is an existentialist quest. It is an assertion of our humanity and preservation of our dignity. We cannot remain passive or silent while our lands and resources are being stolen, our communities displaced, our people murdered, our women and girls raped or kidnapped and turned into sex slaves, and our men killed. We must assert our rights to live in peace and security. We must assert our rights to our ancestral lands. The UN report adds, quote, indigenous peoples' relationship to their lands, territories, and resources are at the heart of their identity, well-being, and culture. Preservation of the environment transmitted through traditional knowledge passed down through generations is at the center of their existence. As the world is increasingly recognizing the negative impacts of climate change and environmental degradation to health, food security, and overall peace and security, the importance of indigenous knowledge and territorial rights are starting to be more fully acknowledged by wider society, unquote. Does wider society include Nigeria, the federal government of Nigeria? At this moment, it does not seem so. Perhaps whoever becomes president of Nigeria in the next year would recognize this declaration. Although we do not have to wait for the UN to tell us that we have a right to our ancestral lands, cultures, bodies, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is a manifestation of the collective will of the world's indigenous peoples. It is a contract with those geographical entities called nations within which we indigenous people have found ourselves, an agreement that calls upon these nations to recognize our humanity, our dignity, and right to selfhood. This is the agreement that the Nigerian government has to date refused to sign or recognize. Biafrans, my people, are you awake? Let's get wiser. This is Rosama, and this is BCB. Join us again for updates on our struggle for Biafra restoration. Like us on Facebook and on YouTube. Peace.
Mr. Pro, I'm doing it.
Mock on the beat.
I can see my people in rivers. I also see my people in Delta, Cross River and Akwa Ibom. State, I can see my people. In Enugu, I can see my people. In Anambra, I also see my people. In Ebonyi, Imo and Aja, Igala and Ijama, Biafra, Allah, Biafra, Allah, Biafra, Allah, Biafra, Allah, Biafra, and I'm the Brazil, Biafra, in the Monga, Biafra, over the Teleman, Biafra, over the How good a place and it could be before good and man to see the unification of all Biafrans. Has it been said already? Let it be done. We are the children of Chukwokike and Biafra. Hey, we are one family. We say DNA.
Thank you for listening to us today. Join us next time for news, cultural, and educational programs. This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Hail to Biafra, consecrated nation. Oh, fatherland, this we must hold and pledge. Defending thee shall be our dedication. Spilling our blood will count our privilege. The waving stands and reachable bids the free shall always be our flag of liberty. We shall emerge triumphant from this ordeal, and through the crucible unscathed we'll pass. When we are poised, the walls of battle to heal, we shall remember those who died in mass. Then shall our trumpets peal the glorious song of victory. We score, oh mighty rock. Oh God, protect us from the heathen pitfall. Guide all our movements, lest we go astray. Give us the strength